Hi everyone, Miss Kinross here. Welcome to this video that is Introduction to Decimals as part of our Fractions and Decimals unit. Let's get started. So what are decimals? The word decimals comes from the Latin root word decim, which means 10. If you look at the first three letters here with the DEC, you might be thinking of words like decade, decagon, decathlon. All of these words have a big focus on 10 of something, 10 years, 10 events, or 10-sided shapes, and so on. So it's the same with our number system. So we have a number system that focuses all about the idea of 10. So 10 ones makes 110, 10 tens makes 100, 10 hundreds makes 1,000, and so on. If we break it down into the parts of a whole, we have 10 tenths, which makes one whole, 10 hundredths makes 1/10, 10 thousandths makes 100th, and so on. So this continues for forever and ever in lots of what is 1/10 or a tenth of the previous column's value. So let's have a look a little bit further. If we think about 946, what we're talking about is we're saying we've got 9 hundreds, we've got 4 tens, and we've got 6 ones. So if we were to add some parts of a whole into this, we could have 946.31. Notice how we don't say 31, it's not a whole number, we're talking about 0.31, so we'd say them as individual digits, or we would say it as the name of a fraction, which we'll be getting to shortly. So we've still got our 900s, we've still got our 4 tens, we've got our 6 ones, and then we've got 3 tenths, and we've got 1/100th. So based on the column that they come in, that's how we would name those particular digits. So it's the same way how we would name them here. So the 9 is in the hundreds column, so our 3 is in our tenths column, so that is 3 tenths. If we want to have a think about the value and how they connect to fractions, we should be able to recognize the sound of the number tenth or 1/10. You will be able to see that in fraction form just here. So the value of our tenth column is 1/10. So 10 of these would make one whole. So 100th is our hundredths column, and thousandths is our thousandths column. So we are able to then place values into those columns based on what our fractions look like. So if I've got 7 tenths, I would have 7 in my tenths column, and I would need to put in my 0, 1 and a decimal point so that people understand that we're not talking about just the digit 7, we're talking about 7 tenths. So if that decimal point isn't there, the number would not make sense as 7 tenths. If we're thinking about one that has more than one digit, so here I've got 23 hundredths, the way that we would do that is we would place our 3 into the hundredths column, and our 2 would go beforehand in the tenths column. So we would have our 23 in our ending in our hundredths column, and we'd put our 0 and our decimal point in as well. Sometimes you do see decimals without the 0 before the decimal point, and that is okay. It's a matter of preference, but I always prefer to have it there so that there is a good understanding that you are talking about a decimal, because otherwise you might not see that that decimal point is there. So reading decimals, here is a little poem that some people find really helpful to work out how we can read a decimal number. So it says, reading decimals is easy. You'll see they've got 2 names like you or me. First you say the number as if there were no dot. Then you say the name of the last value spot. So if we think about that again, we've got a big focus on the idea of the number without the dot and the name of the value spot. So if we have a think here, I see the number 6, and my 6, or the last digit, is in the tenths column. So I have 6, and they are tenths. So we would say it as 6 tenths. If we have a look at this one here, we've got 2 wholes, and then I've got the number 47. I did say before we don't normally say them as we wouldn't say 2.47, but we can refer to it as 47 hundredths. So I'd say the number as if there were no dot, and I would say the name of the last value spot, or which place value column the final digit falls into. So 2 and 47 hundredths is how we would say that word, or one of the ways that we could say that number. If we think about decimals in terms of on a number line, so up the top here we've got our 0, 1 and 2 on a number line, and when we've been talking about fractions, we know that we can split into tenths, and so we've got all of our tenths here, and 1 and 1/10, 1 and 2/10, and so on. Because we know that a tenth is one of our place value columns for our decimals, we can refer to it in this way here. So 1/10 is 0.1 on our number line, 0.2, 0.3, and so on. What's really important to remember is that between each of these numbers on our number line, there are also lots and lots more. So I can split between, say, 0.2 and 0.3. I could split that into 10 and have hundredths in there. So I would have 0.21, 0.22, 0.23, and so on. But even within those tiny mini numbers on the number line, I can split that further. And that's what we're starting to think about with decimals, that we're getting smaller and smaller and smaller. Okay, building up decimals. So what is 0.62 made from? So we've got 0, we've got no holes there. So I've got 0 holes. I've got 6/10. So if we think about it in terms of those fractions again, so 6/10, and I've got 2 hundredths. So 0 holes, 6/10, and 2 hundredths. So this is how we could write that as an addition equation, really. What some people might like to do is to simplify that down and talk about it as 62 hundredths. And so we could say I've got 0 and I've got 62 hundredths. With a different example here, we've got 3 holes. So there's my 3. I've then got 4/10. I don't have any hundredths, and I've got 5 thousandths. Oh, the 5 thousandths has not come up. I do have 5 thousandths. Alternatively, we could say I've got 3 and I've got 405 thousandths is a different way of saying that one. There's the 5 thousandths, so it has come up after all. So 3, 4/10, 0 hundredths, and 5 thousandths. Okay, so as our summary, decimal fractions, we're quite lazy in Australia. We shorten everything. So officially they are called decimal fractions. We say decimals often. Decimal fractions are made from fractions that have a denominator of 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000, 100,000, and so on. We can add zeros to the right-hand side of our decimals without affecting the value of the number. We didn't really cover that, but we will cover that shortly in other examples of decimals. So 6 is the same as saying 6.0, 0.4 is the same as saying 0.40 or 0.400, 0.400000. That doesn't affect the value of the number. And finally, we can represent decimals in different ways. So that is a bit of a summary of what we've covered here today. If you've got questions, please ask. I'd be happy to help you with your questions. All right, thank you.